Something that has been bothering me and the rest of my peers is how short everything has become. It's like we all collectively know that we have very little time left as a species, and our media reflects that. Okay, come with me now and cast our minds back into the ye old days of Vine. Why? We were craving short bursts of emotions. But soon we were burnt out on that short form media. We wanted a meal. And TikTok fills that hole to a degree, but deep down, we all want long form media more than ever. And I don't think we have short attention spans. That's propaganda. I think it's quite the opposite. I think we, as a collective, are insatiable. That's why we spend hours on our phone, because what we're craving is dense, something time spanning, something that's given the time to ripen and mature. I've seen calls to bring back long form, multiple season television. I sense a growing dissatisfaction with nostalgic media. And it begs the question, how long can we go consuming everything we've already eaten before? Do we need any more Star Wars movies? Or, they remade Harold and his Magic Purple Crayon? The children's television show from the early aughts? Who the fuck wanted that? Also, the Mean Girls, the Mean Girls musical movie? My God. Who was asking for that? Legitimately. I wasn't asking for that. I didn't even like the original Broadway production. Some of the songs are bad, and some of the songs are all right. None of the songs are great. I don't want to talk about that anymore. I just think that the model, though currently profitable, is unruly, and there will be a reckoning, because there will come a time where there's no more ways to string along movie and TV viewers into watching the same slightly twisted story anymore. The snake will eat its own tail, and we'll get some asinine Walking Dead reboot for our trouble. Now, I think the problem can be solved. If we complain enough for more longer form media, that could be the key to saving what I believe is a soon to be dying industry. I mean, Hollywood's already kind of dying after COVID. But what are the factors preventing this? Part one, it's not lost. Not necessarily. Before I can get into my gripes with the entertainment industry, I just want to touch on something that's an ever-looming threat to how we enjoy the hard work and artistry of all the TV and films ever created. This is a slight tangent, but I think it works nicely with what I feel is a natural conclusion to all of the entertainment trends I see. The data for films and TV is stored digitally. Ask any computer nerd or film student anywhere, and they'll tell you, digital files are bound to get corrupted or simply become lost. Also, there is the fact that you can't really own it. Nothing is yours anymore, and at any moment, and this is something that can actually happen, you could just lose access to something that you paid for. It's gone forever. Even online filmmakers, casual documentarians, and indie filmmakers still face the threat of one day realizing that they have no access to their own work digitally. It's depressing in a way, because even though the medium can preserve image and sound, it can't outrun time. Things fall apart, and there have been many close calls. Anyway, so why am I talking about film and television preservation? Well, other than the fact there are many organizations keeping these pieces of media alive and thriving, like the National Film Preservation Society or the Library of Congress National Audiovisual Conservation Center. I know, that's a mouthful. It ties nicely to my main thesis. It is unnecessary to constantly remake things that already exist. We should be putting our effort into keeping the works of art available for generations to come, and constantly fighting to keep them alive. This is why I'm pro-pirating. They are actually engaging in media preservation every time you go on uTorrent and download a movie. You've unknowingly become an archivist, and the 1080p download of Surf's Up is a part of a historic catalog. Because it's not in Universal's or NBC's or any big corpo's best interest to do the upkeep needed to protect everything they create. They don't. And that means at any time they could remove access to everything they create for consumers with little regard about the cultural impact. I mean, why would they? It doesn't make them any money to leave it out there, so it must be safer to keep it, locked away and left to rot. I also have to mention that studios also have a problem of file decay, but thanks to grassroots efforts and online popular pirating, it's very hard for most lost media to stay lost. But what happens when a studio actively chooses to shelve their own work forever? Why all of these shows get pulled from streaming services or shelved and they never make it to audiences' eyes in the first place? Well, more specifically, it's because of residuals. If you don't know what residuals are, I'll explain them right now. Residuals are an ongoing form of compensation to those who are members of an actors union. I'm talking about actors specifically in this scenario. They are compensation paid to performers, and it goes beyond the initial payment for their work. So I use the word actor as a catch-all term, but like even puppeteers can cash in on residual checks. Whoever is playing Elmo on Sesame Street is indeed getting that bag. Essentially, they are the checks an actor gets after a show they've been on has aired. If a show is re-released or put on a streaming service or anything, that is when shit gets tricky. They get paid a fraction of what they used to. And that means, even though they're not getting paid as much as they used to, for some media companies, it's easier to cancel a show and pull it entirely than to pay the actors any residual checks they would have gotten from re-airing or re-releasing. That's right. It's corporate greed once more. The way things are produced is one thing, but a bigger problem is that we put way too much stake into profits way too soon. Most shows nowadays, if they fail to reach a certain threshold of viewership, they are automatically disqualified. There is no conceivable way to tell a good story with a one-season story arc that's only like 8 episodes. It's not possible. That's why it sucks. And that's why all of these shows keep getting canceled so damn quickly. Because the people making them have no faith in letting anything ripen or grow. Humanity feels joy when something captures our curiosity. But basing what to greenlight solely on what was made before, the only natural conclusion is stagnation. You know that feeling when your feed, whatever feed of choice, gets so boring that you have to seek out something new? It's foolish to think that anything can be done quickly and still last in our minds. Netflix, you don't know how to make films or television. You don't. Whenever you do, you immediately ruin it after because you don't actually care about the art. You don't care about the people who are like making it. You just care about the money it'll give you. You can't, that's not how it works. It's just not how it works. People want something that they can actually sink their teeth into, something savory to chew on, something well developed so we can feel satisfied. The episodes are getting longer. The seasons for the shows are getting shorter and shorter, and you stagnate the reboots and the remakes and the reimaginings, and you pull us into the prequels, and every episode is an hour long, and it might feel like you're getting a rich narrative, but you're only getting 8 episodes, and they are stretched ruthlessly for time, with no actual care into why it needs to be this long, and without character arcs that make people give a shit about the storyline in the first place. There's only you to your... I'm sorry. I'm speaking directly to any producer, any executive level people. It's your fault for the lack of consistent viewership. Episodes are, first of all, they're too long and too few, you know? How are you supposed to get, people who are diehard fans of anything? Like, think of Star Trek fans. There's so many of them because there's so much Star Trek to watch. All right, calm down. I always get mad. Despite all the garbage that we're given, it still doesn't make a satisfying experience. So we move on to something else to sink our teeth into, to consume, and then we move on again. Nothing is expansive enough to whet our appetites. But I'm not really even here to talk about our society's perpetual unfulfillment. That'll be a different video. I think I have two main issues with the media industry. Issue number one: sometimes it's impossible to actually watch the piece of media you want to see without it being immediately canceled or shelved. Then there's the problem of the industry never taking a single creative chance and constantly relying on old IP. Old IP has been rewatched so thoroughly that there's no worry of it ever being lost to the ether. These problems are so disproportionately unfair to the regular consumer. Either we get the same thing all over again, or we get something new, but it doesn't live long enough to even grow into the IP that can be rebooted over and over again. Nowhere is this more egregious than with animated cartoons. Animation is often thought as a lesser form of media, despite its worldwide popularity and constant relevancy in our collective psyche. I think there's a larger problem that we're only beginning to feel the effects of when things get produced by entertainment companies now. These companies deem it more profitable to just, how do I put this? It's not that they don't care about animation, it's that they don't even see it as like worth it, even though historically it is. So whenever we do get anything animated, especially with like the sort of main titans of the industry, I'm talking Disney, Pixar, Netflix, I guess, it's afraid. They're like terrified. And that's why the indie animation scene is getting bigger and bigger, because the old giants are like afraid of animation, even though it's the most creative medium. It's like they fully believe that the average consumer is an idiot who will gratefully gulp it down like mana if they add a stupid callback to their thing. For example, what was that thing that came out recently? Like when they rebooted Animaniacs, but only for a couple seasons, and they kept talking about the old Animaniacs. They are so obviously using these tropes and the way they've been doing things ad nauseum as like a crutch to avoid creating anything of substance. Do you remember in No Way Home when all three spiders men tickled each other's taints for like a solid 10 uninterrupted minutes? It was like, thank you for the revenue from this movie. Here's William Dafoe's Green Goblin again for no justifiable reason. Fuck you. I'm gonna talk about the Cartoon Network show OKKO for a moment, for example, and then I will scream. OKKO Let's Be Heroes was a 2017 comedy action American animated series by Ian Jones Cordy. He used to work on Adventure Time and Steven Universe, and the show follows a young boy named KO as he lives in a fantasy world full of villains and heroes, and he strives to become a great hero. The show was whimsical, funny, optimistic, and sweet. It was full of anime and video game references, and it was one of the last shows from what I consider the Cartoon Network renaissance between 2010 and 2018. I have a lot of fond memories of this television show, despite it only having 3 seasons. In 2022, Warner Bros. Merged with Discovery, and Warner Bros. Animation and Cartoon Network became one entity. And what did this entertainment giant decide to do with this beloved IP? They essentially said, fuck you, and wiped out the accessibility to see these shows. It's now trapped behind this messy nonsense of streaming services, but HBO has this funny little problem of removing a bunch of Cartoon Network shows off of its fucking platform. So what are we doing here? Nobody respects cartoons. Nobody. And it pisses me off. You can't find OKKO anywhere legally anymore. So why do we even bother? Why do we even watch television? Why the fuck do I care about anything if you can just take a show and rip it off from the platform you hosted it on? They did the same thing to Infinity Train. If you don't know what Infinity Train is, it's a 2019 drama. It was like a fantasy. It was a little funny. Anyway, it was a TV show that was removed from all platforms in October. I don't remember what year. One sec. It got canceled after its 4th season in April 2021. If you want to watch it anywhere else, can't do it legally. It's hard to find it. Same thing happened to OKKO. And who knows what else. Why? Just to save a few fucking bucks? Whatever happened to creating things so people can watch them? That's like if Nickelodeon canceled SpongeBob after its first season because it wasn't a massive hit right away. Because they didn't want to pay Tom Kenny a couple extra few thousand a year. Man, fuck off with that bullshit. Imagine if they canceled Friends or Criminal Minds or The Goddamn Office after the first season because they didn't want to pay residuals. Fuck you. Fuck you to death. This is a death spiral. It's the end of all things. They do it to cartoons, they could do it to your favorite show. They probably have. Nothing is safe. They had a Gossip Girl reboot, canceled that. They had a whole Star Wars reimagining prequel bullshit, canceled that. Nothing will survive the winter. Imagine if they canceled Game of Thrones because they didn't want to pay the guy who plays Jon Snow a little extra. Fuck off with that nonsense. I'm not saying it's bad business sense. I'm saying it's stupid business sense. The entertainment industry is more profitable than it's ever been. I'm talking multi-billion dollars. It makes money hand over fist. You're telling me you don't have enough money to pay residuals? To keep my shows going longer? To to have anything last longer than 4 seasons? It's a pain in my ass. Part 2. Does the Ouroboros ever get a tummy ache? I think it would be pertinent to finally discuss how these stories are produced. Most Hollywood studios produce films with preset budget and timelines. Most of these are prepared years ahead of the actual production, but due to their insistence on using their films as financial portfolios for a business, they often spend billions of dollars to franchise already known IPs like Spider-Man, huge moneymaker, or Harry Potter, right? Harry Potter has been done to death. They're still trying to do it. I'm not going to watch any Harry Potter. It's over. I'm done. These studios use these IPs to promote their films in theaters, on television, and the introduction of streaming services has brought this model into the digital age. Because of the internet, some studios decide that minimizing production costs is a great way to deal with the inevitable loss from pirating or torrenting. However, other studios may be more inclined to focus on making media that does well on streaming in order to keep the revenue from subscriptions coming. That's the way it worked. This is the new way it works. And before that, film and television relied on box office numbers and TV viewers to gauge whether an IP was viable enough to franchise. But now, they've noticed that pre-existing franchises have a higher chance of being successful. And so personally, and though I don't think this is always the case, they think that because it's already a known IP, it will automatically make money. And I can name a number of recognizable IPs that haven't done well at the box office. Freaking Morbius, which was a terrible movie that came out years ago, or the Borderlands movie, also terrible, came out years ago. I read an article called The Economics of Film Entertainment in the Digital Era in order to write this. And it talks about how streaming services often make an entire series upfront, the whole season upfront. They do this because it reduces production costs, but the article also notes it creates a new problem. Producers can't learn anything from their pre-made series, and then they can't gauge whether or not the customer base will like the final product once it's released on platform. Because of that, they can't use information from earlier installments when creating the next season. This often leads to production companies basing whether or not a show gets greenlit for another season based solely on how many people tune in during the first week of release. To me, that is the most brain-dead, idiotic way to make a TV show. But if you're thinking purely financial, it makes sense. However, why the hell would you be making any television or any other type of media from a purely financial perspective? The thing about making art that no producer or executive seems to understand is that there's no way to know if something will be profitable until it's out there in the world and circulating. People can assume that, Star Wars was automatically going to make money, but, they didn't really know. Any pre-existing IP might make money, but that's only because there's enough love, attention, care, and artistry that the people making it put into it to make other people give a shit. When you start thinking of creating art as a vehicle to make money, your art will never be as profitable as you want it to be. Obviously. What should be done is that you pour all the money and resources into creating the art that you want, and then you wish for the best. Because if it's a gamble anyway, I'd rather gamble all in and pussyfoot around, run around scared trying to make art. If the best doesn't happen, fuck it. You have billions of dollars. Literally. Put your money into the next big art venture. That might make money if you care. Being too focused on making a profit will never guarantee a profit. Ever. You can't guarantee a profit. Part 3. Is all hope lost? No. Duh. The industry is constantly changing, and nothing stays the same forever. Nostalgia can only be so profitable for so long before people start to resent the past and look to the future. I think we can return to a more sustainable way of creating media by releasing episodes once a week, and I do mean like once a week, not you have a 6-part series and you release one episode every week. I'm talking having seasons that last more than just short blips, 20 episodes, paying actors more, paying the crew that makes the films and the TV more, respecting cartoonists and animators and VFX artists for their time and compensating them. These are all things that could immediately, instantly improve the state of things. That's not to say that there aren't examples of what I'd call good television and movies right now. As much as the market is oversaturated with absolute shit like The Mandalorian and Grogu, there are still gold nuggets sprinkled within. These gold nuggets are rare, but they do exist. I find that most television comedies are trusted enough to carry 20-episode seasons due to the genre's popularity. We can thank The Office for that. Another good example is the TV show Hacks that's on right now. Go watch Hacks. It's so freaking funny. And although the movie industry is, and I will say this honestly, full of garbage, I can attest that every once in a while, amidst the nonsense, there are original films that seem to genuinely love and respect the medium of film. But you see these coming from independent creators or independent studios, rather than the legacy media that's had a stranglehold on the market. New faces, new ideas. In time, I know people are going to be sick of being fed garbage, and the studios will be forced to stop shoveling it into people's faces, since the garbage will inevitably become unprofitable. They will have to pivot to something better. I'm feeling like that time is coming soon. Because if they make one more Spider-Man movie, I'm going to kill Tom Holland. I know they're making another one. He should die. Tom Holland, you'll live. For now.